Right, have we got everyone in the room now? I'm sure there'll be more filtering in a minute. Good morning, everyone. Morning. Has everyone had a great 2024 season? Loads of jumping? Yes, someone said yes. Must have been. Cool, well, welcome everyone. So we're going to get into this first presentation. It'll be myself and my esteemed colleague Kev Dynan, which I'll introduce to you in just a moment. This first one's about some statistics from this past season, and also we're going to look at some case studies as well as some other things that have happened regarding incidents and injuries that I think we all need to have a look at, and together we can work out how to move forwards and how to work with these things into this next year. Before we do that, bit of housework first of all. Exit, if something suddenly catches on fire, we're going to go through that door, obviously out the main doors, out the front, and that's where we're all going to muster. If you hear a fire alarm, there is no like a planned one today. All right, it'll be the real thing. So please, in an orderly fashion, we'll just all go outside. Mobile phones, please keep them on silent. There's nothing more annoying than you really getting into something and then you hear something going off. So keep them on silent, please. Any questions or comments, grip the steel. We'll pass it round because we can all hear you in here. That's fine. Please speak up as well. We can all hear you in here, but we've got the wonderful guys from Epitech who are recording this today, both on the video and audio, and it really helps them when they're doing their editing because this is going to be on the YouTube channel and things like that, on the British Skydiving YouTube channel. So once we give you the microphone, please speak into it and then everyone can hear you properly, all right? Just going to read this one out for you. Filming and photography warning. So please be advised that filming and or photography will be taking place in this room. If you do not wish to appear in any images captured, please sit at the back of the conference room over there. The photographs or film will be used by British Skydiving for uploading our Skydive the Mag YouTube channel and for the benefit of those members who are unable to attend. The recordings and photographs will be held by British Skydiving and its contracted partners. There may also, did someone say something? No. They may also be included in the British Skydiving publications or promotional material and may also be published on our website and social media platforms. So if you don't want to be in the video for whatever reason, hang out at the back and you should still be able to see and hear everything anyway, all right? Big thanks to our sponsors. We've got three main sponsors this year. We've got Romero Sports and Leisure. That's our insurance brokers and has been for quite a few years now. Also Vigil, who have made those wonderful little backpacks that you've all got now. They also make great AADs. And also everybody's favourite drop zone management software and manifesting software, Burble. So I'm Ryan Mancy, and this is Kev Dynan, who will be with you shortly. We're both the safety and training officers for British Skydiving. So the aim of this presentation is to look at the jump statistics and safety statistics for 2024, to relate those statistics to what we do as instructors, and also to look at how we can improve important areas moving forwards. So, Kev, if you'd like to come up, and he's going to talk to you about some statistics now. I'll be with you shortly.
Is the mic's on? You'll hear me at the back. Good. So no discussion about statistics is complete without talking about how we report it. And I'm sure you've all noticed there's been a huge change in reporting through Skyvault. Everybody's favourite topic at the moment is Skyvault. So you'll be delighted to know that we have done away with paper forms. And what we'd like you to do now is all your incidents, if you could please. Start reporting through Skyvault. So just a quick show of hands in the room. Who's seen Skyvault in action at your PTO? Buzz, thank you very much. Actually, looking around the room, it's like the who's who of skydiving in this room, so we've got some great people in here. So those of you that haven't, the way that you make an incident report now is to go and see someone at your PTO who has special access to this area here. So you can't access this through your members area. You have to go to your PTO's membership area. And you select one of the following. So I'm not sure if you can all see that at the back there, but these are all the incident reports. And instead of filling them in paper, then these incidents are pretty much a copy of what you saw on the old forms, only on a web form, which makes it far easier to submit those reports. There are a couple of subtle changes, a couple of subtle differences, particularly with the injury form. What you'll notice now on the injury form is that you can categorise the injury. So whereas before you still have to state what type of injury it was, so broken leg, broken ankle, that type of thing. But now you can categorise it as category 1 injury, which is requiring simple first aid. These categories are going to change a little bit later after discussions with Jake, but at the moment you categorise one broken bone as Cat 2, multiple broken bones as Cat 3. An injury that's likely to cause life-changing injuries would be Cat 4. And sadly, a fatality would be Category 5. But the other thing that we've changed on this form is we also ask you to give us an indication of the likelihood that this incident is to repeat itself, and that's really to inspire you as an instructor to think, actually, how likely is this to happen again, and therefore, do I need to take any action to prevent this from happening again in the future? So it's to inspire you to think about those particular actions as well. The other thing that does is that provides us with a risk matrix, and that risk matrix, when we're analysing the injuries, and you'll be familiar with this. This is straight out of the risk assessments. I'm sure you're familiar with risk matrices from risk assessments. So that helps us to measure the severity of the risk and the likelihood of the reoccurrence. And what that does, from our perspective, just so you're aware what happens at British Skydiving HQ with incidents, is we then look at injuries and we can then classify them according to the severity of the injury. And that helps us, particularly with this seminar today, when we look at all the stats at the end of the year, we can actually pick out what are the key injuries that we need to discuss with you as instructors, so we can look at how we as a group of instructors can help prevent those injuries, and also what incidents we need to discuss. Rather than try and talk to you about all the incidents, all the trends that occurred through the year, we can focus on 3 or 4, maybe 5 key trends that we need to focus on, and that's what Ryan's going to be focusing on in a couple of minutes. But for those of you who are interested in statistics like myself, I absolutely love statistics, and for those of you looking to update your lesson plans in particular, here are the key statistics. So it was a bad year this year. I don't think anybody's had a stellar year. The cost of living has definitely impacted a lot of people's ability to go skydiving, as has that spectre of the weather. So we're down to about 2,226,000 descents, and that's down from about 250,000 the year before. So we've done less descents, and that's mainly due to the weather, I think. In terms of how we broke those descents down, you can see the makeup there. So largely licensed skydivers and tandems, but for those of you in the room, about 8% of what our total descents were conducted by students. The number of students we trained, if you include tandem, was just over 46,000 students that we trained. Obviously, a large proportion of those are tandem students, about 6% AFF and CAT system. Still training about twice as many category system students as we are AFF, and that's the breakdown. So we haven't seen a huge decline in student numbers due to the weather, but there is still a decline, and it continues. The category system graph is still continue to fall, whereas the AFF graph pretty much stays fairly constant there. In terms of gender, we're still seeing an 80-20 split across the group there, male to female, and a slight change in the trend with AFF. We're slightly down on the male to female ratio with AFF students. I notice a lot of you are writing these stats down with interest. If you would like a copy of any of these stats, they should be on the website fairly soon. But if you want them a little bit sooner than that, do feel free to email me, kevin@britishskydiving.org, and I'll send those across. Gary, noted. In terms of the number of student descents that we did, I think we were training roughly the same number of students, but descents, as you can see by those figures there, were definitely down, and that's clearly down to the weather, as with console and CAT system freefall descents as well. We did about 5,000 of those. Like I say, I'm racing through this because I want to get to the good bit with Ryan. I will make those stats available for those that want it. In terms of incidents, though, luckily we didn't see too many. Didn't see an increase in off landings, but we did see an increase in malfunctions. That's the blue line there, and also we saw injuries pretty much the same level as last year as well. So that's two good trends, certainly in terms of off landings and injuries. But malfunction rates were up, and that's across the board. We saw an increase in malfunctions distinctly with licensed skydivers as well. Anna. No, that's the total number. Sorry, yeah, a very, very good point there, Anna. Thank you. So Anna was asking about the rates. So what you're seeing there is in this graph here is that's a rate. So that's no, sorry, they're absolute numbers. Sorry, Anna, I'm getting myself mixed up now. I'm trying to understand the question. And then these here they're the total number of students trained. So we trained 1,000 AFF students, 2,000 category system students this year. These are the total students trained, so we trained 46,000. So I'm going back. Those are absolute numbers. Is that the question there? So to answer your question, we had 27 injuries to students. No, that's in total. Well, I'll come to that. Good question. We'll come to that in a sec. So in terms of the types of malfunctions, so there we see some of the statistics. So there's not major numbers there, so nothing hugely to talk about. There were 3 AED fires, one on, but to note there is that 3 of those 4 AED fires were on board aircraft in the descent. There was only one life-saving AED fire on there, which takes the risk of malfunction to come to your question, Anna, in terms of the rates of 1 in 555 jumps. Jay. So Jay was asking a question: does the misidentified malfunctions because canopies are taking longer to open? Let me throw that to the room. So you are the people that see this on a regular basis. That's distinctly a trend. Is now we're seeing more students jumping canopies like navigators, as opposed to mantas. Are we starting to see? Do you think, as instructors, quick show of hands, do we think that's the case, that we're seeing more misidentified malfunctions because the canopies are taking longer to open? Put your hand up if you think that's the case. Yep. Sorry, Jay, I should have handed you the mic there. So what Jake was saying was that with canopies taking longer to open, more people are identifying it as a streamer because the streamer takes longer than 4 seconds to open. Does that mean as a group we need to be moving to a 5-second safety count, do you think, Jay? Hang on, Jay, let me hand you the mic and talk to you.
Cheers, Kev. All I'm doing is basically, once you get to the end of their 4-second count, is encourage them to look up and actually say the words, is it big, rectangular, and so on, and by that stage, the canopy's opened. But at 4 seconds, generally now, with EQs and navigators and other such canopies, they can take a little bit longer than 4 seconds, that's all.
So did everybody get that? Would everybody agree with what Jay was saying there, was the importance of identifying that the canopy was big, rectangular? Okay.
I know that there's one, sorry, I got this one. I know that there's one PTA that's on a 5-second anyway. So 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, check canopy. Is anyone else doing that? Is it just the one PTO?
Well, I think we are really subconsciously.
It's definitely something to think about. That extra second might mean the difference. And it doesn't matter much in the grand scheme of things, does it? They don't lose that much altitude, really. But at the same time, if it's going to prevent some people from misidentifying what's just a bit of a snivelling opening into a streamer, I think it might be an idea. So, I mean, this isn't like we're making rules and regulations within this. This is just, we're trying to get you guys to start thinking about this stuff, taking it back to your PTOs, having these conversations, having them with your chief instructors as well. A lot of it's dependent on the equipment you're using as well, isn't it? So just some food for thought, really. Sorry, carry on.
That's okay. So to move on to category system and AFF injuries, so one thing that the move to Skyvolt has done is enabled us to put things in bright coloured charts and really identify where the key risks are. And the incidence of multiple broken bones is Ryan is going to talk about that shortly in a bit more depth. But there we see of the 27 injuries that we had. We've got 18 that we categorise, or what we used to categorise as serious, where there was a broken bone or multiple broken bones involved as well. So that brings us to an injury rate or risk of injury of about 1.87 per 1,000 people that are trained, or for those of you like doing things as in jump numbers, there's a risk of injury, 1 in every 535 descents on that. So student off landings, so 15 student off landings there, and the risk of off landing was 1 in 968 jumps, which gives us total risk of incident as 1 in 168 jumps. So coming back to your question, Anna, about trends and rates. Then we are definitely seeing an increase in the rate of incident. So although the graph looks like it's turning down there, we've got to contextualise this. So we were last year close to an incident 1 every 300 jumps, and now the risk of incident is now 1 in every 168 jumps. So that's injuries and malfunctions combined. I think discussions at STC have certainly, I think. Personally, that weather's a factor here. Would you agree with currency? It is harder to keep students current and jumping as frequently, and I think that's definitely got an impact as well. But Dylan, any comments on that?
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you think that's because of the reporting culture, though? Do you think more people are reporting now than they were probably 5-6 years ago?
That's a fantastic point. Do you feel more comfortable reporting now than you did 5 or 6 years ago as instructors? And if that's the case, that's great. That's to be encouraged. I think it partially could well be, and one figure where that's definitely evident is off landings. We are definitely seeing a huge increase in the number of off landings, and we see that predominantly with licensed skydivers. People do feel, well, certainly it feels like people are more open to reporting. And one of the great initiatives that both Ryan and I have taken is to encourage that reporting culture, because if you don't report, then we're never going to establish the trends. And it's only from trends that we can identify what the key risks are, particularly using our new fancy risk matrix. So that's encouraging to hear, and I would encourage everybody to report absolutely everything that they could.
Sorry. Not easy with that in the back of me here as well. Do you think there's more off landings because we don't throw woodies anymore?
Again, I'm going to throw that open to the crowd. Do we think there's more off landings because of woodies? I mean, we definitely don't throw woodies. I don't think so. I mean, personally, I do genuinely think that people are more ready to make reports, and particularly off-landing reports. And one of the key things we're looking at with Skyvolt is actually making the off-landing report a separate report, because there are key factors that are involved in an off-landing that are not actually mentioned in the old-fashioned 118. So actually that another information that's not relevant to off-landing. So as part of that process to encourage it, then we'll be looking at a new off-landing report, and that should be coming fairly soon as well. Okay, has anyone got any questions? Any other questions about any of the stats? Like I say, I've deliberately rattled through it, and I have lots of data on injury rates over years and incident rates over years, and I'm more than happy. I've got all those stats ready to go. So if you want a copy of those, do email me, kevin@britishskydiving.org, and I'll happily send those over. But what we really want to focus on is what's come out of that risk matrix now as those key risks. And so I'm going to hand over to Ryan, who's going to talk to you about that.
Sure. Thank you, Kev. Okay. Right, moving on. This first one, we got a video to show you. Kind of an exciting one. I find it quite exciting because it's great to watch, because the outcome was very good. No one was injured in this, although I think you'll agree with me when you see it, it's quite a close call. All right, so how many AFF instructors are in the room? Okay, so let's have a look at this then. So this is a level 3, pretty good exit. Checking his altitude, telling what height he's at. All good. One practice pull. And the secondary's off. All is well so far. Checking his altitude, which is good. Clearly the primary instructor feels a little bit of tension, so he's staying on that a little bit longer, and then he feels comfortable to let go. Checks his altitude again, which moves him, and off we go. Starting to get a little lower altitude now. I don't know if you can read what's on his wrist there. It was 1,800 feet. So that was the student's AAD going off. And now we got 2 out. And of all the places you could have 2 out over a main road, that's unlucky, isn't it? There goes the free bag. Can we just slide it into that field there, look, without hitting the tree? No, we can hit the tree as well. Okay, what do you think of that? Right, what we're going to do, we're going to have a look at this again. We're going to go through a few sections. I'm going to pause bits so we can talk about them, okay? So clearly the exit went really well. Really great. Oh, look what you've done. Look what you've done. Oh, sorry, I've got to do. Thank you. What about that? So there we go. That's all good. Right, what happened there? Minor thing. Could anyone see what happened when he gave that signal? Dane? Why do you think he almost went over and had to kind of come back again, didn't it? Why do you think that was? Let's watch it again. So that bit. There you go. Yeah, so he reaches over and the drops. he's reached over the top of the student's arm, which has burbled him, and he's fallen. If you give your signal underneath their arm, you have the authority with the air, and you can give the signal really clearly in the face, and you can hold it there if you want. There's no danger that you're all of a sudden going to drop down, whereas if you're over the top, you're in the burble. So just a minor thing there, but if you see this stuff, it suddenly makes sense, doesn't it? Right, moving on. Yep, it's quite a tight view. So he clearly feels some tension now, but he's making sure he's in just the right place before he lets go, which is a good thing. Right. Sorry, carry on.
You could see that he was already starting to go before you let go.
Yeah.
And you don't grab all of the students on.
So this is a great point to make. If you feel some tension, should you let them go on a level 3?
No, you try and correct it, but you hold them, you correct it to a way that you hold it onto the legs, and when you feel like it's okay, then you let go of the legs, but you stay there. You don't hang on to their arm, because when they go, you've got nothing.
Yeah. So you've got more authority if you keep hold of a leg. There's two trails of thought with this. If you feel tension, one is, well, if I can feel they're going to go, really it's safer to stay on. But then if you stay on, you can't really pass them for level 4, even though they're in a reasonable body position. You haven't let go and see if they can stop it, because that's what they've trained to do, what you've trained them to do, isn't it? Ideally on a creeper or on a horizontal trainer, you say, if we let go of you and you start going round, what are you going to do? I'm going to arch, I'm going to dip and stop that turn, check my altimeter. If you're not going to give them that chance, it's different trails of thought on this. Sorry, do you want to hand the microphone over? Josh?
Firstly, it's easy to criticise one jump, so
of course.
I don't want to be too harsh on the instructors, but if you do as Dane's saying and hold the hip grip or the leg grip, then you allow the student to use their arms and correct the turn without having to let go of them first. You can see whether they're going to do anything about it. The instructor, before he lets go of the arm, is actually pushing down very slightly on the arm, which is enough to correct the turn. And then when he releases that, the student releases that input and the spin starts. So.
Cool. Oh, I saw a few other hands up. Has anyone else got any points? Are you all right just handing that over? Kev, thank you. Stuart over there, and Cara as well.
So I agree with not letting go of them if there's tension. Let them turn and see if they can stop the turn. The instructor that's not on can match the turn rate. But if you look at the altimeter, it says 7,200 feet. So you might want to think about what height you let go of a level 3 that's got a turn already
Very
built in.
good point. Yep.
I don't know whether there was maybe pressure for the main side instructor to let go, because the instructor filming, was quite keen to get them off, and I get it, but at the same time, I'm wondering whether that other instructor's a bit newer and felt the pressure to let go because the more senior instructor was telling them to let go, but he felt the tension and didn't. I don't know. I don't know if there's better communication between instructors that can be talked about.
Yeah, I mean, communication is absolute key, but when can we sort communication? Ideally before the jump, isn't it? So, especially if you've been training the student and you've got an idea about what they're going to do, or maybe a certain thing that this guy, he might flatten out or something he did on the last one, whatever it is, you can communicate that beforehand. And it could be something like, I'm going to get off as soon as you give me a nod, but I'm just going to get a little high there. I'm going to wait, and absolutely do not let go unless you're ready and you're happy. You communicate that stuff beforehand so that when you're in that situation, you know what the other person's thinking, and you can work as a team and help each other out. Right, so moving on. What about fall rate, dressing for success? Because the guy who is... Oh, don't do that. Hang on, let's move forward. So he comes off, and clearly, as soon as he starts turning, he flattens out, and all of a sudden there's a major issue with fall rate here, isn't there? So regarding dressing for success, absolutely essential. One thing I will say about that guy, he looks quite heavily set, so you'd think he could go fast, but he could also go very slow because he's quite a tall guy. There's a lot of surface area. If he flattens out and starts spinning, that can create an awful lot of lift. At that point, have a look at his altitude. We're at 1,700 feet. I've spoken to the instructor and made sure he was comfortable with me showing you this video, and he was more than happy, but not for entertainment purposes, obviously, for educational. And he said that the biggest lesson he learned out of all of this, all these points that we're bringing up, the main one was the best way he could have demonstrated to that student it's time to open your parachute was by opening his own. Yes. Having a hard deck and sticking to it, because then he put both of them in danger. So think about what you would do in this situation. Has anyone here, any of the AFF instructors, ever lost a student before? Be honest. Yep, there's a few hands going up. So if you do enough AFF, you can get caught out very easy. Personally, I've been really, really close before. Unfortunately, they deployed just as I was really struggling and we were starting to get down there. So it can happen to anyone. Right, this whole thing about, oh no, never happened to me because of this and that, that's just ego and nonsense. It can happen to any one of you, all right? Absolutely. So have that plan. At the back there, sorry.
As a general comment, maybe also the gear up is an issue. Some of the scenes looked like the rig is mostly on the left side of the students, but
excellent. So the equipment fitting, and a lot of these rigs, I'm not sure about that one in particular, a lot of them, you have the side lateral bands and you can tighten them. So taking the time on the ground to make sure the equipment is properly fitting and tighten these side bands and stow them away as well. Because obviously if they're flapping about, that's a potential when they go for the pull, they could grab hold of that and think they're pulling the primary handle, can't they? So it's just taking the time to do it properly on the ground beforehand.
About that as well,
Mm-hmm.
I've been in that student position when I've been examining, and it scares me. And what I would say is, at that point, putting a finger out, or you even pulling, the student doesn't see that. All they see is a blur.
Yeah,
that's all they see, mate. So
there's this hope if they're spinning, it's going to be like a flick book, and they're going to see this finger going round and round. But a lot of the time they don't. And let's face it, in that situation, the guy's so overwhelmed. In fact, if you look what he's doing there, his hands are coming in like this. He's now going for his emergency handles. But before he even gets to them, his AAD goes off on this one. That's how low they were. So, yeah. Right, moving on. So how to reduce the chances of losing a student. So we've just discussed a few things. Number one, dress for success. Work as a team with the other your other instructor. Those are really big things. Personally, when I'm looking at a student, I like, all right, think of it this way. Your own equipment setup. What jumpsuit have you got? Do you fly with booties? Are you used to flying with booties? Have you got a tight jumpsuit? Have you got a real baggy jumpsuit, but then you put weight on? Personally, I've got like a multi-range suit for doing AFF, which really helps me. I really like it. It doesn't have booties. But if I want to go slow, I've got these zips down here. I can even do this in the aircraft. And now I've got all this bagginess. And likewise, I can do that, and I've got a weight belt, which I can put however much weight I think in. That gives me, personally, a massive range. This is another thing to think of. I have been in a situation where over Christmas, I ate loads of food and drank loads of beer, and I put quite a bit of weight on. And then I got back into jumping in the season, and I was like, whoa, you know, my fall rate, my natural medium fall rate had changed. So taking those things into consideration as well. So keeping on top of flying skills, beware of skill slip. Doesn't matter how good you were yesterday, what can you do today? That's really important. We all like to think, and especially for the guys who are AFF instructors who are also tandem instructors. Because if it just so happens that your PTO, you get into a routine of being used for loads and loads of tandem, and then you go back to AFF, a lot of the time, or indeed doing videos, if you're flying with a wingsuit, AFF skills can sometimes slip. And let's face it, AFF skills are nothing more than formation skydiving skills. So get up and do some full way, do some tunnel, keep on top of your skills, because they will slip if you don't keep on top of it. Keep current, keep as current as you possibly can. It all makes a difference. Just people are sharper when they're current. Have a hard deck and stick to it. This is the major point that we're making here, and that was the biggest lesson from the instructor that pointed this out for me. Any questions before we move on to our next one? No, perfect. Next one was a static line entanglement. So this is one of the worst things that we can have with a student, and it's been the cause of numerous fatalities worldwide over the years. There is a video to this one, but I'm not allowed to show it, sadly, which is, I respect that, it's not a problem. But what I have got is some statements made by the instructor, the guy doing talk down, and also myself when I was making some notes and things for the chief instructor, so we were all on the same wavelength regarding retraining the instructor and getting him back up to speed. All right, so we're going to run through these notes. So this is, oh, by the way, I've changed some things so people have no idea who it was or where it was. Green on, so this is a statement from the instructor. Green on, I checked my LT, checked the spot, I got him in the door, had hold of him with an overhand grip. He got into the position relatively symmetrical, but his legs did get pushed a little, but settled okay. Then I said, ready, look up. At this point, he started to push off the door. So he's not going on the command. As he went out, he was relatively symmetrical, but was pitched head down, legs up slightly, and increasingly got steeper as his mane was pulled out. As I was watching his exit, I noticed that one of his legs appeared to get entangled with one of the risers or line groups. So basically, he's kind of slumped out the door, looking down, and he's gone over, he's front looping through the lines, and one of the line groups has gone between his legs. We carried on watching him and stopped anyone else from exiting that pass. We asked the pilot to start circling and keep an eye on him, but I could see that he was spinning and one side of his canopy was slightly collapsed due to his entanglement, but it appeared to still have a large proportion of the canopy inflated. I then saw that the canopy had fully inflated and his canopy was no longer spinning. We continued to watch him, and I saw him carry out a control check, flares and turns. It appeared that he had a controllable canopy. Well, how on earth did that happen? Because just a minute ago, he was completely entangled and spiraling. Any ideas? You won't believe it, because I'm blown away. This is a first-time static line jumper. So he's gone out, he's entangled, he's realised that he's got all these lines coming up from here. He reaches up on his risers high up, does a pull-up, pulls them out from around his leg. Oh, that's worked, and carried on. What are the chances of that? Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, you're right. Right, this is the statement from the talk down instructor. The student, because you've got to think about it, if you're on talk down and you just see a canopy open and start spiraling, you've got to start thinking, what am I going to say? What's actually happening? Is it a line over? Are they entangled? What? The student was observed leaving the aircraft as planned. Main canopy deployed, red in colour. It wasn't red, but anyway. And was observed to start rotating to the right. Rotations were continuous. As the student talk down instructor, I advised the red canopy to check their canopy and clear any nuisances and conduct a control check. I repeated the radio commands to the static line student whilst in the continuous rotation. DZ Control had not provided me with any further details over the admin radio, which would have been useful to understand what they could see through the high-powered binoculars. So think about it. When you're doing student talk down, are you away from the drop zone controller who's looking through the high-powered binoculars or telemeters? At your centre, what's going on there? Is it worth, as a talk down instructor, keeping a second pair of high-powered binoculars around your neck? And if you see something weird going on, let's have a quick look. And then it just gives you more of an idea of what's going on. Hopefully you can use some better commands to help them out. At approximately 2,000 feet, I observed the red canopy to take control and stop the turn. I continued to coach the student for a full control check. This was completed by approximately 1,500 feet, and I continued to coach the student through the landing pattern and to the ground without further incident. It was observed by the dispatcher and caught on camera that the student left the aircraft in a poor body position, which resulted in them becoming entangled within the lines of their main canopy, causing the canopy to rotate. The student cleared the entanglement by approximately 2,000 feet. So, this is just some notes that I made so that me and the chief instructor were on the same wavelength, and actually he was all over it anyway, but these are some important points. Good to see the instructor giving pre-jump briefing on the main points. So before they exited the aircraft, he was giving him a talk through. Right, remember, when you get to the door, lock that elbow, get in position, be really positive, keep your head high, real positive off the door, all that sort of thing. Clearly a poor student position, so the student then didn't do that. Elbow bent, pushed against the wind deflector. The instructor could have assisted student further forwards or even pulled them back and started again. So the instructor knew what needed to happen, but when the student was in the position and his elbow went like that and he started being pushed back, at that point you've got to make a critical decision. Do I move them into position? Do I drag them back in, or do I just let him go? What would you do? Because sometimes, if you just let them go and they get away with it and it just becomes a debriefing point, you kind of get used to that. Yet this is what can happen in that situation. It's not always going to go well. All right, so something to think about. Static line does not appear to be held high. Hard to see as it's out view of the camera, but this seems to be the case judging by where the static line is during the exit. So make sure that that static line is high. This is stuff you wouldn't get away with on your basic instructor course. So don't let these things slip. Instructor does not seem to be controlling the student during the exit, the overhand grip. Clearly the student exits before the command go. Instructor could have held the student in position until the command given. When you give go, that's when you're letting them go as an instructor. If they're slumping out the door beforehand, hold them in position, be strong. If you've got an overhand grip on the equipment, that can be quite difficult. If you've got an underhand, you can pretty much muscle them up in the door, so pull them back slightly so that they're not going anywhere. You can even move them forward slightly. All right, so think about how you actually grip the harness, where you grip the harness. Speak about it to your other instructors, the guys who've been doing it for years and things like that. Everyone has a slightly different way of doing it, I've found. Every PTO does it slightly different. Of course, you need to be doing it in line with what your chief instructor wants you to do, but I have noticed that there isn't a great deal of consistency between instructors. We all do it slightly different, so have a think about it and communicate with each other. Instructor does not appear to be observing the student throughout the exit and under canopy, possibly not getting in the way of the camera. There was someone there filming, and the moment the guy went, he was back. Now, we were assured afterwards that he actually moved back behind the camera room and continued watching. Do not, I can't guarantee that, do not rely on cameras. Watch the student. Don't watch the canopy. The canopy will be doing all sorts of things. And of course, that's what we want to look at. Oh God, is he all right? Is there a malfunction? Has he got twists? Watch the student, because that's going to give you the debriefing points afterwards, especially if the camera fails. Any questions on that one? No worries. Time-wise, we've got a few other things to cover, so I'm going to go through these things a little bit quicker, all right? We had no pull on an AFF consolidation jump. Exit did a practice touch okay, but could not locate the primary at pull time. Why is this? They recovered and tried again, unsuccessful, so they carried out their emergency procedures. Pretty standard, they did the right thing. They pulled the reserve handle just before the AAD fired. So I'm not sure with what sort of timeliness they did this in, but it probably took them a little longer than they were planning. Turns out they were doing lots of back loops on the jump and turns just before pull time, so this was likely rushed. The kit had not been jumped regularly. Now this is something we've been seeing globally. This is a global trend at the moment. myself and Kev and Jeff as well, every couple of months usually, we're in a meeting with other safety and training officers from around the world. We got the guy from the USPA, from Canada, from Belgium, various other places, Australia, and it's quite an informal chat. We speak about what's been going on, any trends that we've seen going on. We analyse some videos, some pictures, that sort of thing. And one thing that's going on, and it's not just students, it's happening with experienced skydivers. There's lots of no pulls. We had 13 AAD fires this year. Like we said, there was a handful of them which were actually in an aircraft that was descending a little too quickly. But that's obscene. That's a load of them. Some of those were life-saving. All right? So what's this trend we're getting into where people can't open their own canopies? And it seems to be, usually if they've got equipment that's unfamiliar, they get a higher rig, they put it on, they go up and jump it. They don't spend any time on the ground doing some live throws, getting on a creeper, doing some live throws. That's not cool because they're not a student anymore, so why bother doing that? And wingsuiters as well, wingsuit jumpers, they're great. They've been doing this with the same rig for ages and ages, and then they've switched to a different suit, and now all of a sudden it's a bother, and they're ending up on their reserves because they can't open the main. So this is a global trend. How can we sort it? Anyone? I think we should treat it, if you were a stunt person, all right, you would work out what stunt it is you need to be doing, and then you break it down into component parts and you rehearse it over and over and over again. You practice it, all this practice on the ground. So when it's time to go live, and there's a couple of stunt guys over there, by the way, it's time to go live, the camera's on, and you do it, and it should go seamlessly. We're not doing that. We're just grabbing a rig, because we're experienced with 30 jumps, and then straight up. There's no prep work on the ground, and that's the point. All right? Stacey? Either that or they hadn't jumped for a little while. So if they've not jumped for a little while, it seems a bit like doing with the backwards just before full as well. Agreed. I know. So that's definitely something to bear in mind when you're briefing consoles.
So if you're talking about people jumping up from new equipment,
yep.
A lot of the times you see people jumping new kit for the first time, but they're not doing a solo jump, so they're probably doing a two-way or something. That takes away their option of doing practice touches and freefall.
Yes, there is that, but if it's unfamiliar kit or they haven't jumped for a while, there's no reason why they can't, if they're in a freeway or whatever, they can't say, look, I wouldn't mind just before we turn that first point, I'm just going to do a quick practice pull because I haven't jumped this rig before. I'm sure people will be absolutely fine with that. It's not like they're in competition at that point. I'd hope not anyway. Okay. Shoulder dislocation. I'm sorry about the full frontal male nudity, but I think we need to look at this. Right, now we hear about shoulder dislocations with tandems, and it's uncomfortable, it's painful, and it can do damage as well. We did have one where, I think it was earlier in the year, where a tandem student, he lied on the medical, arms out, and his arm started windmilling in freefall, literally. And it was doing serious damage. Okay, so it is a serious matter. And it's annoying on a tandem because now the instructor's dealing with the customer and they're in a state and you've got to get them focused. But if it happens on an AFF jump, it is literally life-threatening. And it can put the instructors in danger as well. So this actually happened. What would you do if you suspected this in freefall? All right, you can't see it, can you? You can't see that this side's nicely rounded and this looks a bit weird. But what's the first thing you're going to notice to the person as they're flying?
Dump them out.
Do you dump them out straight away? Do you hold on to them? Maybe stabilise the arm, work out what's going on, thinking, is it that or are they having a bit of a moment? Are you jumping at somewhere near the coast and you know it's actually pretty windy up top today? So there's dangers of just dumping people out immediately out the door, isn't there? So things to think about there. But what I want you to do is start thinking about what would you do in freefall. Start anticipating this stuff. And if you see it, you can get on it, can't you? This particular individual had a self-declaration of fitness to skydive. Now you see the bit that's kind of, where is it? You can see it's obvious because it's in bold and it's underlined. Let me show you what that actually says, that bit. I have never dislocated a shoulder. So it's pretty clear. But the thing is, should we start talking about this during the ground school? Because they read all this stuff and they're like, yeah, it's fine, I want to jump. But they don't really understand the implications if it goes wrong. This particular individual, I believe, was under 18 and his mother was there as well. And he landed and they landed. But I think it popped back in again and he was able to land. He landed okay, but he was obviously in a lot of pain because his arm had been going mental in freefall. When he got down, they said about, oh, has this ever happened to you before then? He goes, yeah, it's happened numerous times. And they're like, well, why didn't you tell us? Like, you've no idea of the danger that you just put yourself in. And his mother knew as well. So they got a bit of a stern talking to by the instructor there, and fair enough. But it's absolutely ridiculous. We can't assume these things. So what I'm encouraging people to do is just at some point at the ground school, just ask people, you know, maybe at the start of it, is there any injuries that we need to know about, past injuries, in particularly dislocated shoulders? Have you ever dislocated a shoulder? And you'll find out. One thing I found out as a chief instructor years ago, you can have the people in the office say this and they completely ignore it. But when you do the ground training and instructors there, all of a sudden it becomes very real. And a lot more people were coming forward and go, yeah, actually, I dislocated a shoulder. I've got it. One person said, I could do this at will, right? Which was a bit concerning. But if we know about it, we can do something about it. Now, AFF, it's different. They cannot jump. Tandem, we're looking at that now. And we're looking at ways that they can, because all they really need to do, for the most part, to reduce the chances of it happening, seriously reduce the chances, is hold on to the harness throughout the skydive and let the instructor do the rest. All right, so food for thought there. What about talk down? Have a think about if you're doing talk down and the person, your instructor swoops in and lands there and goes, that guy, I think he's dislocated his shoulder, because how are they going to steer the canopy? What are they going to do for landing? So you're telling them to do this and that, and you've got that awareness of what's actually going on now. Sorry, a question at the back there.
So I just wanted to know that, if I understand correctly, for you guys, if you had a dislocated shoulder before, that's like a complete no-go for AFF? Or
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, the danger is way too much. Yeah. Moving on. Flare heights, PLF injuries, year after year. We get quite a few of those, yeah? So, what's the best way to teach flare height? Anyone? What do you teach? Do you get them? Is there a certain platform at your PTO where they climb up the steps and the instructor goes, see that height? That's about flare height. So they've already been there and they get an idea if that's about 10 to 12 feet or 12 to 15 feet, whatever you teach at your PTO. Some people say when you're looking down, and if you can see some people over here, well, imagine there was one person stood on top of the other person's shoulder. That's around the same sort of height. You can say, look at that windsock, that's however high. As soon as you get to the top of the windsock, maybe around that height. There's lots and lots of different ways. So find what's working and what kind of isn't working. And again, it's just a matter of talking, communication amongst people, all right? There are better ways and there are less better ways to teach this. And not all students are the same either. Some people will pick it up differently than others. So find what works for them. When's it best to teach a two-stage flare? I've experimented and been doing it from the first jump, and it works really well on things like navigators. Would it work well on a manta? With mantas, it seems to be they need to flare all the way down and hold it because they don't get too much when they just flare to the first bit. All right, so something to think about there with what equipment they're using and the age of that equipment. I hope they all jump in kit that's in good condition. But yeah, something to think about there. At what point do you introduce a two-stage flare? Should we be favouring the smallest canopy possible for the student? We shouldn't, should we? Yet we look at the wing loading chart and go, well, yeah, let's get you down onto a 240 because that will give you a wing loading of, when really they should be on a 280 for a while, assess how they're going, maybe keep them on it for a little bit longer just in case they make some mistakes, which they probably will do at first, then get them on the smaller one later on. There seems to be a rush of getting people onto the smaller ones. Injuries seem to be worse the higher the wing loading. I believe John de Blanc said, because someone asked him, what is wing loading then? And you can look at, oh, well, if you take the size of the canopy and you divide it by this and that. Wing loading is the engine of the canopy. Think of it that way. The higher the wing loading, the more power, the more contact they can have with the ground, okay? So, yeah, keeping people on slightly larger canopies for longer, I don't think it's a bad thing. Yeah, there's lots of great skills that they can master or get a lot better at before downsizing. People are in a rush. This is a bit of a contentious one. Should we be allowing students to jump canopies outside of British Skydiving's wing loading allowance, but within the manufacturers? Because you can do that. It's in the ops manual, you can do that. But like I just said, we know that if they are going to get injured, it's probably going to be worse with a higher wing loading. So just because it's a rule, it doesn't mean that you have to, this is a minimum, what's the word? This is a minimum criteria. It doesn't mean you have to stick to that. You can put them on a lesser wing loading, can't you? So, radios, consistency of commands.
So,
If you think that that's a bit of a grey area, that's more likely to get injuries, do you not think perhaps you should just change the rule then?
I don't think they're more likely to get injuries. It's that the injuries are likely to be more severe. My personal feeling is yes.
But
although
you're
that
not
would
in
have
a
to go
position to do that.
That would then have to, we need to get all the chief instructors, discuss this at STC, and they need to vote on it. So yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's something I'd personally like to see, but I'd be very interested in the thoughts of the chief instructors as well, and what they think of the members of STC.
As an old chief instructor, sometimes we just want a set of rules. If we operate to the rules, then we're okay. Yep. But there's a lot of grey areas in the ops manual.
Yeah, there is.
Difficult those days because in the military, teaching JSAT, everyone's heavier, so all of our students must not be able to jump because they're all 95k. That's why we get that flexibility to allow us to jump to 280 because of that rule. Huh? Oh yeah.
That's all those great military breakfasts, you see.
I'd just point out that STC changed the rule back so that we could use the manufacturer's guidelines.
Okay.
And at the time, it came down a lot to the fact that we were starting to use navigators that would produce a flare for the student, opposed to a manta that doesn't.
Yeah. Okay, great points there. Thank you. Right, consistency of commands on the radio. This is a really important one. So what about practicing this during the ground school? What do you use if you're a talk-down instructor? Do you say the same thing every time? And is that the same thing as the other instructors? And do you practice this on the ground school?
Yes.
You do. Fantastic. I've known more and more PTOs that are adopting this, and also there's a lot of them that don't, and it's very random. Do you use pull down on your left steering toggle? Or do you use turn 90 degrees left? Or various other things. All right? So
Ryan, I'd say when the students with the hanging harnesses, it's no good with that, sorry, above me. What I'd say is when the students are in the hanging harnesses, encourage your instructors to use the same words of command that they're going to hear from the talk-down radio.
Perfect. That's exactly what I'm getting to. Someone gave me this. It's one that they actually made, but as I understand, there's certain PTOs that have made their own, which is very, very similar. It's a separate lesson where they're in a suspended harness and they literally just practice radio commands and what they're going to do under canopy and flaring and things like that. Another important thing at the bottom here, which we'll get into in just a moment, is if there's a malfunction, check your parachute to be repeated until the emergency procedures are initiated or until it's no longer safe to initiate emergency procedures. NB, Student parachuters should not be told to cut away except as a last resort. So that's some places are adamantly against that, and some are like, no, we will as an absolute last resort. Something to think about there. How long should someone be on the radio for and why? What's the minimum? You should know this. 3 jumps. I personally never keep people on for 3 jumps. All right, there's too many variables involved for my comfort anyway. What if the weather's changed that day? Previously they've only ever jumped in nil winds, and they come on and now it's blowing. It's windy up top, but it's still within limits. And now that, well, you've done 3 jumps now, so we're going to take the radio away. Different skills altogether. So yeah, personally I like to keep the radio on for longer. Or indeed, if you've taken the radio away and they either haven't jumped for a little while, or like I say, the conditions are drastically different from previous, get a radio back on them. It doesn't hurt to put a radio on them. All right? Right, and indeed if they've changed canopy as well. Right, moving on, because I appreciate timing-wise. We're just coming to the end of it. So what do you say if the student has a malfunction? Think about that. Here's one for you. What would you do in this scenario? Bit of a close one. And thank God he's got an RSL as well. I mean, it's a student skydiver, so there you go. But this is the dangers. So what do you say in these situations? You can't say, don't cut away now, because don't cut away sounds a bit like cut away, doesn't it? Food for thought. Take it back to your PTO, speak with your chief instructor, speak with all your instructors. Have like meetings in the morning where you discuss this stuff. Communication is how we're going to get better and better at this. Quick summary. So we've covered the 2024 statistics, issues regarding losing AFF students, how to reduce the chances of static line entanglements, how to reduce the chances of no pulls, the severity of shoulder dislocations in AFF, high flares and PLFs, consistency of talk down commands. Thank you for taking part. Thank you very much.